Welcome to ITBS Media Educational Video on the CIA Triad. In today's episode, we will explore the fundamental principles of information security: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The security model that we want to look at today is called CIA Triad. And I've just mentioned that we have three ingredients of this security model. The first is confidentiality, the second is integrity, and the third is availability. So, the security model is to guide security experts or professionals in security architecture or design, the implementation and monitoring of security controls to protect business sensitive data. But before we actually go into how to use this model, we need to know a few things about data we want to protect. It is important to bear in mind that business cannot run without data, and business objectives cannot be achieved without data. So data is like the gas on which the vehicle of business runs to achieve its objective, that is, move from one location, from its origin to its destination. And the quality of the data will determine the achievement of the objective of business operations. So businesses receive, create, process, store, and destroy data when the data is no more needed. So you see so many activities: receive data from customers, create data, process data, store the processed data for future use, future reference, and future business transaction. And when the data is no more needed, it is in most cases stored in archive because of the regulation. So when it is stored in the archive, it is stored for a period of time, and that will be determined by the retention policy of that organization and the applicable regulations. Now, looking at the point of having data, I said that the quality of data will determine the quality of the business process. So let's look at the quality of data. I will focus mainly on three things here before we touch on others, but there are three key factors when we talk about the quality of data. We talk about the accuracy of the data, we talk about the completeness of data, and the consistency of data. So organizations must understand or must ensure that data they have is accurate, that it has all values useful for business operations. Take, for example, you want data on sales of maybe car, so you want to know how many people have bought car from your company, where are they located, what's their income range, and things like that, for you to analyze and know the class of people that you should target for probably the new model you're bringing out as a car manufacturing company. So if you have all the data about the purchasing power, but you don't have their geopolitical data, that is the data where they are located, where each of them is located, and for you to be able to determine from which region do you have your markets. You may not be able to determine, though you have other values in place, but you may not be able to determine accurately where you should send or maybe open a new store. So in talking about completeness, you want to be sure that you have enough data and you have the right data in your database. Then talking of accuracy, all the values recorded are the true representation of what they describe. So that's another quality that data possess. Data should possess accuracy before it's used for business purpose. Then consistency. There should be no discrepancies in data stored on the database or databases or shared across the servers and systems within the organization. So there should be internal consistency. The data itself, if you open the data on system A, what you have there should be what you will see if you open it on system B. And how can we achieve this? You can achieve consistency through version control. That's one example of how you can achieve the internal consistency. Before we now go back into the main reason why we have this, is that your data must be believable. The believability of the data, how much data are trusted by authorized users in executing intended business process. This is very important. It has to have that believability. If the data you have, if it's not or cannot be trusted, then you would not have confidence in using that data to make informed decision. So let's now go into information security, talking about the triad. We see in this model here, we have confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So we're going to be moving them. We're going to be examining them one after the other and see how each of them impacts, or how we use each of them to protect data. What is confidentiality? It is to ensure that information is only accessible to authorized individuals and entities. So when you're talking about individual users, or authorized users, we're talking about not just humans, systems and processes that need the data. So let's see confidentiality here now. So the property of confidentiality is about granting access securely and denying access. So it's both granting access and denying access. Granting access only for authorized users. And I've just mentioned that access should be granted only to authorized users. Authorized user can be an employee, a customer, a partner, a provider of service. Let's take, for example, in a banking environment, as a customer, You have the customer login portal where you log in to transact business with your bank. So you are given access to what you need, not more than what you need. You're given access to where you'll be able to see your accounting detail, where you'll be able to transfer fund, where you'll be able to deposit checks, either maybe digitally and stuff like that. So you have access to that, and you have access to where you can review your statement, bank statement for the month. And you also have access to the documentation side where you can receive letter from your bank where you see maybe a policy has just changed and your bank has updated its policy about certain area of providing you service. That section you have access to it. So the access is granted to you on need to know basis, and that is where confidentiality comes in. Confidentiality is to ensure that you have access to it, and you have access to it securely. Not just have access to it, but you have access to it securely, and you don't have access to what you are not supposed to have access to, that is things you don't need. So, and while granting access to those who are authorized to access certain resources within the business resource environment, it is equally the same mechanism that will be used to deny access to unauthorized individuals. So, and doing that, the basic security control here is looking at access control. So access control helps in ensuring the confidentiality of data. Remember, we have talked about the fact that the quality of data, we talked about the accuracy of data, we talked about the completeness of data, and we talked about the consistency of data. You don't want any of this to be tampered with by an unauthorized individual. You don't want the accuracy of the data to be tampered with. That is, you don't want lawful modification. So you grant access to only those who should have access to it. That is about confidentiality. And let's look at integrity. So, integrity, I've talked about the property of data, and here they come up under the integrity here: completeness, accuracy, and internal consistency. You want to be sure that the integrity of the data is intact. But one thing, let me explain clearly. The completeness of data, accuracy of data, and internal consistency of data for the entire business operation is not the function of security professionals. The function of the security professionals is to protect that completeness, that accuracy, and that internal consistency. The creator of the data creator, the data owner, are responsible for completeness, accuracy, and internal consistency of the data to ensure that the data they create possess these qualities. And the security professionals now help to ensure that in granting access is granted to only those who are authorized to use the data or to even view the data, and at what level of need should access be granted? Is it just a view, or the user should be able to write also into the data, that is, modify the data? So obviously, when business operation is going on, there is always modification of data, there is processing of data in one way or the other. There could be aggregation of data and things like that. But this has to be done in the interest of the business and by authorized user. And because of that, the responsibility of security professionals is to ensure that they grant access to only those who should have access to the data, and also they monitor the access and review what is done with the access through log analysis and some other security principles that may be applied. Also, so we move on to the third one. So we're just looking at this CIA Triad so that those who are coming into the information security newly will have at least a clear understanding of what CIA Triad is. Now, talking about availability, which is the third component of CIA Triad. Availability means that the system should be available, data should be available in a timely and reliable, and that timely and reliable access is granted to systems and to data by the data owner for users. And also, security put in place must not impede the availability of the system and availability of data. So the security must work to protect the data and also make provision for timely and reliable availability of the data. One method, one common way by which organizations preserve data is by storing data in the database. And the security aspect of the availability is not just storing the data in the database, but by backing up the data in the database. When data is backed up, it can be restored even if there is any problem with data that is stored in the database. So data backup is very crucial to business continuity and also to disaster recovery. If there's any interruption in business and database is corrupted, the only way that business can go back to business on time is by restoring data from the backup to the database, or by creating a new database and restoring the data in the backup into the new database environment and making it available to authorized human users, processes, and systems. So these are just basic principles behind the CIA Triad, that is the fundamental security principle or model that many professionals will use in the course of their operations, in the course of their career. And funny enough, we use these principles also without necessarily being security professionals. On your phone, when you put password or PIN, you're already implementing confidentiality as a principle. And when you try to send text message to your friend or family members and you check, you read over your text, you're already looking at the integrity of the data you want to send. So in a very simple way, on daily basis, we apply these principles, only that as security professionals and in business environments, it is more comprehensive in the way the principles are applied. So, but that is just the basic description of the CIA Triad. And I've said it that the integrity of the data comes primarily from the data owner, while the security professionals protect that integrity. Security professionals cannot just go into accounting data and begin to check, is it correct, is it not? So it is the data owner that is responsible for completeness, accuracy, and internal consistency. They have to work with security professionals to make sure that the right processes are in place, like version control, checksum, this data validation, and more other methods can be applied to ensure that integrity of data possessed by the business or of which the business is a custodian is believable, trustworthy, and useful. So that is how far we go on talking about CIA Triad, and bear in mind this is protecting sensitive data. Sensitive data. Sensitive data for one organization might not be sensitive data to another organization. So sensitive data in terms of each organization, how the organization classify its data, and what the organization consider the sensitive data that need to be protected, and also the regulation, the laws that operate within the country, region, or industry where the organization operates determine what data will be classified as sensitive. Thank you. So, hope to see you in our next video. Stay safe and secure.